Got a pickup truck with a dog box, slam full of hounds that don't know when to stop. Tough old male, Rambo's his name. He's quick on his feet, hell on game. Got a little chip in the back of the pack. She ain't real fast, but she's true on the track. She's got to drive and she's got the guts, and that's why she's gonna run with us. It's in the blood in your veins, it can't be tamed. It's passed down through your family name. It's a pack of dogs coming through the pines. Lights of fire in a young boy's eyes. It's the word of the hound, it sounds just right. It's dog time.
Okay, folks, we're here with what has become my favorite part of Walker Days weekend, which is the conversation with the legends. I'm Brett Hall. I'm from Virginia. I'm a director on the Tree and Walker Breeder and Fanciers Association board. I'll be the host or moderator or whatever you want to call it here. Today we have Whitey Marshall from Kentucky and Donnie Hubert from Indiana. We'd originally planned, and if you saw on our mail out, we'd originally planned to have Mr. James Turpin with us, and also planned to have Mr. Frank Johnson with us. Those guys had some scheduling conflicts. Really wish we could have got them here, but as it turns out, we've got myself and Whitey and Donnie, and I'm going to let these guys introduce themselves to you. We'll probably take a break about midway throughout for an equipment check. If your phone rings or something like that, step out. Just have some respect for these guys, because these guys have earned their right to be here and be considered legends. Whitey, as I said, Whitey's from Kentucky. I live about 15 miles from the Kentucky border, so I told Clayton we'd probably have to turn on the subtitles so you guys will know what we're saying, but Donnie's probably okay. Both of these men have very interesting backstories, and I'm going to let them introduce before we start talking about coon dogs and coon hunting. I'm going to let them talk a little bit about themselves. So Whitey, I think I'll start with you. Can you just introduce yourself to the folks here?
I'm already trying to chop Donnie to death here. I'm Whitey Marshall. I'm from Kentucky. I want to tell you I'm honored to be asked to do this. I never consider myself a legend. Unlike Donnie, he's a real legend in the hunting part of it because of everything he's won. The way my work was, I had to make a decision about '96 what I was going to do in the coon hunting world, and I decided to try to learn everything I could about the breeding and from top breeders, and that's been my life. I'm honored to say that I've sold some people as many as 6 to 7 pups over the years, and that, to me, that's knowing I've done something right.
Right, and Whitey, you're a Vietnam veteran.
Yes, I am.
Tell us where you served and what outfit you served with and all that.
196th Infantry Brigade in Vietnam, and I walked point for my first 6 months and carried 60 machine gun, second 6.
Okay.
And now I'm an active ride captain for the Patriot Guard. We honor the fallen veterans, and I've done almost 1,500 missions on that part of it now. So that's my life, and raising these pups and stuff.
Yeah.
That's awesome, Whitey.
Yeah. Donnie, we'll pass the mic to you here, and you tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Donnie Hubert.
Put that mic a little closer to you.
I've lived around the Liberty, Indiana about all my life. I had to go on disability in 1999. I worked in a factory for 20 years prior to that, and it got shut down. And I've had about 5 back surgeries, which has really stopped my hunting. But my very first Walker dog was in 1970. He was out of Miller's Rock. Some of you younger guys don't know Laverne Miller, but he's the legend right there, Laverne Miller. And Lee Crawford and him talked my dad into getting me a registered dog to hunt in these hunts, because we were still hunting grade dogs. And once I got started with that, I hunted that for a while, and then I went to the Army in 1969. through 75. And when I got back out of that, then I started hunting again. And hunted Sackett Junior dogs is what I got to like after I got started back with them. And I've tried to stick with that line pretty much all the way through. Frank Giddings, a personal friend, he helped me find a young dog that I wanted. And I had raised Rock River Stone and sold him back to Frank, and then I needed a young dog. So Frank helped me find him, and that was the Seth dog that Frank Johnson and I got started with.
Okay. And Donnie, I'll talk to you about Seth and Slugger and that whole line. I think first I want to know something that we have talked about before, about when you guys, question to both of you, just when did you get started coon hunting? What was your first coon hunting trip? How old were you? And tell us a little bit about that.
Well, my dad always hunted and took me with him all the time, and back then you didn't have youth hunts, you just had a hunt. And he took me to Whitewater Club, which is now the Milton Club that holds automobiles. In 1958, I won my first cast. I still have the little trophy. Back then, if you won your cast, they give you a little trophy. And they kept it and put my name and the dog's name on it, and I was 8 years old and hunting in an adult cast. Of course, Dad knew all the people and knew I'd be taken care of and watched over and all that, which would be hard to do today. If you turned an 8-year-old kid loose with a good hound with 3 adults, it's going to be a different story. But that's how I got started.
All righty. Whitey?
Yeah, my first trip was with a banjo picker. I played the bluegrass band, and one night he had coon dogs, and he said, "Let's go coon hunting." We picked a wall, and I went with him, and his dog treated coon, and I got hooked there and got my dog, and finally got a dog. I had a gray Bluetick, and I hunted her for a few of the hunts. Like Donnie said, back then they had them only gray dogs. You did registered dogs. And then I got my first registered dog was Tree Singing Chief, and he had just been high scoring dog against KC World Hunt. And one of my friends, I didn't have the money to pay for him, and he helped me trade and get it. And then I turned around and messed up and won the Kentucky State Championship in 1982, and I was hooked.
Tell us about that. What dog did you hunt?
I was hunting Tree Singing Chief. He was out of Carolina Casey, Shed Stewart's old dog, and that got me hooked. And then we went from there.
Right. Donnie, while you got the mic there, tell us about the dog that you won with. What was the first, what you would consider a good hound that you owned?
Well, the one that I really done a lot of with back in the early 80s was Bally, Silver Creek Bally. He was out of Derrickson singing banjo. I got him out of Tennessee when he was about a year old. And I got him in the top 20 of both world hunts 3 years in a row. And I ended up 1 year 5th place in UKC, and the next year 9th place in the ACHA. And back then, ACHA hunted about 600 dogs out of their hunt for elimination. One thing I forgot to start with all this whole deal, and all of you out there is going to probably agree with me, if you got a good understanding wife that'll understand this and stay with you. 2 days ago was our 53rd anniversary, and our anniversary always fell on Walker Days weekend. Sometimes she went with me and sometimes she didn't, but she was an understanding and stayed with me.
Do you think maybe sometimes she was just glad to have you out of the house?
That very possibly could be it.
Something, you guys are here. You're the legends today. But I know I've talked to both of you, and you talked about Mr. Miller earlier. When you were up and coming in the sport, who were the legends then that you looked up to that maybe helped you with your breeding programs and helped you with the dogs that you owned?
Well, on my part, again, I'd say probably Laverne Miller and Frank Giddings for sure. And of course, back then you had Merchant and House and all those. Some of you guys know them, some of you don't, but they all hunted good lines of dogs. They were all winners. I mean, they traveled and hunted the hunts big time back then, and they were the people back in those days. 5 dogs would about dominate the breed as far as the ones that everybody are going to. Now you don't have to drive 50 miles to find something to cross out on your dogs, really.
And like I told you before, Joe House is one that helped me, and Tom Bates helped me. Tom and I bought the Cook's Raider dog off of them, and that's what got me really started in the stud dog business. And but I've been blessed and trying to keep it going. And one of the dogs I hunt now is 7 generations of my own blood that I've bred, and I'm proud of that. And both dogs I hunt now has got my blood in them. So we've been blessed.
Sure. Thank you, Donnie. I guess that'll be a good segue into, we've talked about the early hounds that you've had that were successful. You just talked about hounds that you've got now, that you've bred now, and we talked about the Sackett Junior line. Let's talk a little bit now, Donnie, about Seth and how you came to have Seth, and then talk a little bit about Slugger, who was off Seth. Is that correct?
Right. Well, that's like, excuse me, what I was saying earlier, I was looking for a young dog, and I called Frank Giddings and told him I needed one after I'd sold him Stone. He found a dog for me in Georgia. My mind went blank on the boy's name. I know it well, but Frank told me about him, said he was just green started, so I called him and bought him, and he shipped him to me, and that was Seth. And he was about a year old when I got him, and I started into hunting him, and a dog that everybody fall in love with if they went with him. He was accurate, had a real good mouth, stay treaty, he'd split or he'd back a dog if he needed to, Nowadays you don't find very many dogs backing any dogs, but you're still getting parts of each one of those in a cast. But he was the one that got me really going. Prior to that, Bally, I hunted around a lot of hunts. I tried breeding him, he didn't reproduce. I just kept hunting him and I stopped breeding him. And then Seth's the first one that I got back to do any breeding. And he was a grand pup at Sackett Junior. And I don't know if you want me to go into that, but that's about when Frank Johnson and I got together, was with Seth.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about Frank and how that partnership started there.
I had bought a female off of Frank a few years earlier to breed, and then I had this dog here, and I wasn't wanting to sell him, and I started winning with him around, and Frank got to calling me, wanting to buy him, and he just kept on me. One day I was in the truck driving to work, he called me, he'd come in from hunting, he said, I want that dog, what's it take to buy him? We got together on a price, and then that kind of started our real good friendship to where we were together on everything after that. And like I say, it's just grew and grew from there. We got from Seth to Slugger to right on down the line to right now he's hunting a dog called Woody and breeding him, and that's would be 1, 2, 3, about the 5th generation of this same line of dogs.
So Slugger, you won the Purina race with him a couple of years at least, right?
Yes, 2 years in a row. And then we placed 2nd to 3rd year in 2002, 3.
Tell us a little bit more about that. Were you the primary handler there?
No. We had another boy who was handling them because I was still trying to work some on the side. And Frank had his business. He's a roofer, and he had a business, and we hired a handler, and he's the one that traveled around, because when that Purina race started, you had to hunt all over the country. I mean, from Michigan to Florida to Oklahoma, Pennsylvania. I mean, you just went all over. It was an endurance race more than anything, really, back then. And they do it altogether different now. But Slugger won it with dominating scores for the first 2 years, and then, like I say, plus 2nd to 3rd year.
But tell us a little bit about Slugger. What was his style? Was he a lot like Seth?
No. Well, I mean, they was in one way, but another. Seth, like I say, if you turned loose right here and struck a coon quick, Seth would be with dogs. They'd be on that tree. Slugger, when you cut him loose, he's gone the opposite way. Before all this stuff that they do now. And he done naturally. It wasn't what you wanted, but every time he'd be treated, he'd have a coon. He was accurate. Had a real good mouth. Like I say, his mother was out of stylish slipper, and we all know what kind of mouths they throwed on those dogs, and that's the way his was. And everybody complimented him after cast, you know, because he didn't leave the country, but he was off to himself. If a dog come to him, he didn't care. He'd stay treated, but he was always to himself. And I don't know whether it's just the way that cross was, but other dogs we bred out of Seth weren't that independent. I mean, they'd be with dogs or sucker. But Slugger had his own mind. I've seen him before. You get him out on a tailgate, and you can see him if he throwed his head in the air, it was kind of like he's winding, and you're wanting to go this way, and he's that way. You might as well just cut him loose because he's gonna go that way. But that's what we like about him also.
Right. That's great. I know Slugger did a lot of winning, and even the new guys in the sport know a lot about Slugger. And Whitey grinned there when I mentioned Frank's name, because we all know a lot about Frank too, don't we, Whitey? A lot of stories we were sharing before the interview that probably we shouldn't or couldn't share.
We ain't gonna share it here.
We'll let Frank come defend himself, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, Whitey, I know you talked about the Raider dog that you got from Joe House,
yeah,
right? And then you ended up with Ruby in the early 90s. Is that right?
That's right.
Take us down from Ruby on down to I think anybody who knows Whitey these days knows Silverado Dan,
yeah,
as being your major stud dog. Take us through the years and tell us a little bit about how you came from Ruby to Silverado Dan.
Yeah, I got Ruby from Spider Web, and I had a dog that I was hunting when I had a back operation in '91 and didn't know if I was going to be able to hunt again. And I took him up in Ohio, and Spider Web and Dennis Falk tried him, and they bought him. And then I was out of the dog when my back got better, and they had this little female out of Deanwood Drifter they called Ruby. Spider did. And I bought her, and she was a blessing. She was the start of my breeding program, and she was accurate, hunted good, little tight on the ground, but she was what everything else she wanted. She had the heart. And then when I got Raider, I made that cross, and that really got me on the ball then. And of course, he was out a lawyer. At that time, there was only Double Tough Lawyer, and Raider was the only two stud dogs out a lawyer at that time. Yeah. And then I went from there. I bred the Hard Rock Cafe 7 times. I didn't have a stud dog after Raider went sterile, and had good success with those dogs, crossing with my blood and with Kenny Mason's dog. And then when he died, that got me looking. And me and Mark Hutchison went in together, and we bought the Rat Tat dog, which was 3/4 night heat. Got him off of Chester Coulee in Indiana. And Donnie might have known Chester, but that's where he come from, and from there we just kept it going. I bought the Big Timer dog and studied him after Rat Tat died on me, and Timmy Eaton I bought it off, and he done a good job for me. And then I was coming home from Walker days, and I got a phone call, and they wanted to know what I wanted was for Timer and Andy Canada, and I told him. I said, "Oh, you don't want that old dog. He's 8 years old." And they made me an offer that nobody was going to turn down, and I sold him to them. And then, of course, you know James McCall, and that's how Silverado.
Greg and Eric.
Yeah, and Eric Mahone, and I drove Dan 3 times in the hunt, and I was hunting what I consider nice females. And the Dan dog beat me 3 times at the end of the hunt. He'd be off somewhere and have a coon. And I told Greg, I said, "Greg, don't know if I can afford him, but if you ever sell that dog, I'd like to have him." Because he was out of my blood on the bottom side. I told him Clody Cheyenne, so when Greg called me about 2 weeks after he granted him, he said, "Whitey, I can't promote this dog like you can." He said, he said he needed to be promoted. And it's been a blessing. He's been great to me. And now we also got Midnight Rider, which is off a full litter mate to Dan. and we bred her to the Dreamer semen, or the Dreamer at that time. He was still breeding.
That's hardwood Dreamer.
Hardwood Dreamer, and he's in the Hall of Fame this year in the Southeastern, and that's the blood that we've got there now, and that's what we hunt.
Right.
The one thing I forgot, Brett, when I was talking about Seth, before we started breeding him, we won the High Grand Night Champion at Walker Days in '98. And then after that, we started breeding him. We didn't hunt no major hunts with him. After that, and then that's when we ended up going to Slugger.
And Slugger was directly out of Seth, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Okay. He was out of Seth, and a stylish lipper female owned by Gary Miller down in Kentucky.
Right. And Whitey, I'll go back to you. I know I started out with James Turpin was on the agenda to be with us today, and unfortunately he couldn't make it to be here. Now he lives right around your country. Is that correct?
Yeah, James I'd say he's about an hour and a half from it.
Okay.
Yeah, he's down at Richmond.
And did you ever breed any of his dogs?
I bred the first Grand Night that was ever bred to Kane. And of course, I went down there, and me and my son went down there and hunted with James, and he was a lot older, but he was tougher than either one of us was. He was a tough old man. He was a good friend, and he had a young dog off that cross that he would probably use. He got him run over when he wasn't very old. He was doing an outstanding job. But James is a fine person.
Yeah.
He's an outstanding person, and I look forward to seeing him here with the guy in here.
Yeah.
James was definitely a lot of younger guys' idols back in his day.
Yes, sir.
And like Whitey said, he's a gentleman, and yet he was a winner. And when he hunted through the week, he hunted the bluffs on the Kentucky River where most of us wouldn't even turn it on. And that's what he hunted all week long. He was tough.
Yeah. Well, and I was looking forward to interviewing James. I shared with Whitey. Whitey was partially responsible for me owning my best hound, Jewel, that we got into the Hall of Fame here last year. She was out of Rue, and Whitey had sold us some pups, and we got started on that bloodline. So I knew that you liked what James had, and I think what both of you guys had to say about him is what we all think about James.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something that Donnie, you touched on about Seth was covering, and Slugger I think was more independent. What kind of hound through the years? What kind of hound do you prefer? Because you mentioned that especially in Kentucky, sometimes it can get a little mountainous where we're at, right, Whitey? And some folks like dogs that don't go as hard, dogs that don't mind the cover, dogs that want to go complete opposite direction of dogs. I guess what I'm asking is, through the years, what kind of style have you developed that you look for in a dog?
Well, when I was younger and hunting these hunts, you didn't see dogs be singled out like they are nowadays. I mean, you might turn loose and strike a coon within 5 minutes and run it 200 or 300 yards in tree, and you'd have all 4 dogs on that strike, all 4 dogs on that tree, and you didn't have no Garmin to look at. You had to know your dog. And I mean, that's one thing I think we've got away with. Everybody turns their dogs loose and sits and watches that. They don't listen to what he's doing and all that. They just look for him being treed, want to go that direction. I myself, especially with the coons that we have nowadays, I'd want a dog that's looking for a coon as soon as you turn him loose. And I know a lot of dogs are going to go deep, but there's no reason a man couldn't tree a coon within 400 to 500 yards of anywhere you turn loose in Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky, if he's looking for a coon. But now some people just want them dead loners by themselves, and that's fine. But when they get like that with these hour and a half hunts, by the time you go to 4 separate trees, the cast is over. So all of you's got first trees, whoever had the highest in strike is going to win the cast. You know, it just seems to me I'd rather see them work together. They can split, but I'd also like to see them work together and see what one's treated first and what ones don't.
I think the quote that I said to you, Whitey, was I want all of mine and part of yours.
That's what I thought, yeah.
Do you agree with Donnie on that?
Yeah, in our country, we haven't got the coon that they have like in Indiana and Ohio. And if I can get a coon by myself and I get part of yours, I've got you beat, because there ain't that many coon there.
Yeah.
And I still want a dog that'll hold a tree. And that's one thing that's kept me on top on the breeding program. And I feel like if a dog won't go hunting by itself and won't stay hooked when it hooks, I don't breed them kind. I mean, I just don't do it. Because it's hard enough to take two good dogs, and Donnie knows the same thing. It's hard just to take two good dogs and get a good pup, much less. I mean, that female is at least 60% of it, if not more. And Joe always told me that. And Joe told me one time, he said there's not such a thing as a proven cross. He says it's just like children. There's no two kids the same way. And I've always took that to heart.
And that's Joe House.
Joe House, yeah.
And you can make that same cross 2 or 3 times and they'll be different.
Yeah, you can't get her. And I've seen, and I tried to breed to a family of dogs, not just one hit wonders. I mean, I do my little background just like the jam dog I got now. I made a lot of calls before I bought this dog. And everyone in that cross, everybody I talked to at home, you couldn't buy. I mean, they were coon dogs. And the same way as Rat Tat. Every dog in that litter made grand nights before they were 2 years old. They're a family of dogs. And that, to me, that's one thing you really need to look at. You need to look at that family of dogs. A lot of people, a lot of breeders and stuff, a dog in the world hunt, they run and breed to it. Might be the only dog in the whole litter to even tree. I mean, they don't do the research on it.
That's true.
And but to me, I do my research. And a lot of people don't like it, but some people do. But it's made me successful anyway.
Donnie, what are your thoughts on that? You agree with that?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, a lot of people breed anything they bring in there to you. But, you know, like Whitey says, if you're going to do stuff for your own, you need to do that research. Like I was telling you earlier, the best dog I owned myself when I was younger and hunting these hunts was Silver Creek Ballad, and he was a nice hound. And a boy that lived by me, Bob Kettering, had a female 7-mile Sioux, but we couldn't wait till we get them bred. And there wasn't a dog in that litter that was even close to it, its mother or father, either one. They'd run tree coon, but they was nothing. And I bred 2 other females, and that's why I said earlier I quit breeding him. He just didn't throw the type of dog that he was. And, you know, you're always striving to, whenever you breed something, maybe it'll even be better than what their parents are. That's what you're striving for, not just wanting to run tree or coon.
Right. You mentioned the female that you're hunting now, and I think both of you talked about what the dog that Frank's hunting now. Tell us about your current hounds and what kind of style are they? And I know you've got a couple entered in the hunt here tonight, right, Whitey?
Mm-hmm. Well, right now, like I was saying, we started out with Seth, and then the Slugger, and then the Slugger Junior, and then Slugger 3, and now Woody is the dog that Frank's hunting down there. That's the one he's breeding. And I seen the other night on that Tournament of Champions, a little female out of him won her cast the first round, but I didn't get to see. She didn't make it up into the top, but Frank had started her and had sold her.
And is Woody out of Slugger 3?
Yes. And Slugger 3, when we was getting ready to advertise him, he was grand night at 10 months old. And we called UKC to make sure we could advertise that, and they researched it for us and said he is the youngest dog to make Grand Night champion at 10 months old.
Wow.
And that's what Woody is out of. And, you know, we've just been fortunate that each dog has thrown an offspring that we could keep going with. And like I say, I'm not able to hunt now, but Frank is doing the hunting, and he still hunts about every night.
You know, the dogs I'm hunting now, like the Jessie dog, she's 7 generations of my blood. And and we took her up in a high the other night, and in 40 minutes we made 7 trees or 6 trees and seen 5 coons with her and Jam, and both of them is trailing type coon, you know, and get treed, but they're looking to get treated, as Donnie said. When you cut them, they look to get treed. And but I'm really proud of both of them right now.
Whitey, do you think you try harder, or it means more to you if you're hunting your own blood?
Well, yeah, it does to me. It does to me. And but like I say, I don't care a bit to go get. I never was one jealous, and that's one thing that's hurt a lot of the coon hunting business right now is jealousy. And you know, if I hear about a good dog somewhere, and I've been fortunate enough to buy some that somebody else should have had, by jealousy they wouldn't buy them. But you know, that's what I go look for. I look for that dog. It's got what I want. I want to stay treed with a good mouth. And James is exciting. She's a real exciting type of dog. And Jessie's just all business. She's just a business type dog. I mean, but she's going to treat you coon. When she trees, you can go to it.
One thing I was wanting to touch on is like raising pups. I always like to find a good female. You know, everybody else brings their own personal dog to you, but I mean, for pups that you're wanting to maybe keep one out of for yourself, I always liked a good female. And in my opinion, they're as hard or harder to find than a good male dog. And the other thing on a female, she may be a real good dog, may be bred good, and she may not be worth a dime as a mother. You probably know that one.
Yes, for sure.
Some of them are the best mothers in the world, and some of them you just about got to take over and raise them for them, you know. But that's all part of it.
I want to talk to you, I guess, about the future of the sport. Tell us how the sport and the dogs, I think maybe we touched on this, how they've changed since you started coon hunting, and where do you see this sport in 20 or 30 years?
We ain't gonna be here, brother.
That's true, but I never thought we'd see the sport go the way it's went today. I mean, up to today. With all the electronics and all the money that's involved in these now, as far as the prize money and everything, it's just unreal. Who knows where it'll be in 20 years. But we've always, at our club down at Liberty, Hannah's Creek Conservation Club, we've always tried to keep the youth involved. We have a nice youth hunt every year, and we used to have the YEP programs when they were doing that. And then we also do all the hunter education courses for our area there. And we've picked up a few youngsters that have stayed with it, that have started right there. But we always have a real good youth hunt in June every year.
You said
unreal prizes for them, really.
You said that Kevin Cable was one of your youth hunters, right?
Yeah, Kevin started out coming to our club when he was 10, 11 years old, him and his brother. And James Tyree, their uncle, was from our area. He'd always bring them. They hunted every hunt in our area, and they're still Kevin's brother in, but Kevin, as you know, most of you know him, and him and his wife are members of our club, and she really took over our youth program. She's really a good person, does a good job, and has helped our hunt to get a little bit bigger.
Now you're wanting me to step on toes, ain't you?
Yep.
I know what he was leading up to. In my opinion, money has worked the coon hunting business. I mean, it's got so that they have, and I'm not knocking it, if you can afford to do it, go do it. But they've took away from the common man of being able to get into the sport. It's going to be hard to get in. A dog that would have cost us $2,000 a year ago, you know yourself, $5,000 or $6,000 now, probably not as good as dogs it was then. I mean, they got these dogs that everybody went, you know, whoever thought they'd see $1,000 stud fig on a coon dog. I mean, and the common man cannot get in right now. I mean, you just can't get in. And that's going to hurt us down the road, because you're going to have a lot of people say, I can't afford to do that, guy. But more power to them if they can do that. But, you know, look at the crowds, you know, they got them big hunts, $100,000 in truck hunts every other week, seemed like. And now they got what's called $1 million hunt they got coming up. And just like money, I think it's really hurt the coon hunting business for the common man. I mean, it's hard to get anybody interested in it because they can't afford it.
One thing that I think's really changed in it is from back when I started to now. I mean, for up till 10 years ago, everybody that was at that hunt was generally hunting their own dog.
Right.
Now you go to a hunt, you draw out in a cast, 4 dogs, 3 of them are going to be paid handlers on the average. But very few people, and I can look right here and see 2 or 3 of them that's still hunting their own dog. But there's a lot of people out there that are just paid handlers. That's what they're out there to do, and if they don't win, they don't get money. So they got to stay on the winning side. But the price of these dogs has just skyrocketed. You know, the dog's not a bit better than that same dog would have been.
That's what I said.
Selling for $25,000 to $100,000 for a dog, that's just unreal. And to go out and buy a pup, there's people asking $2,500, $3,500 for an 8-week-old pup. That pup may die in 10 days. You know, I mean, you just never know. I mean, anything can happen, but that's really changed our sport.
Yeah, to Whitey's point, even when I started, you know, you could trade a .22 rifle and a good laying hen for a coon trigger. And a guy priced one to me the other day, and I asked him if he wanted my house. You know, that's all I had that I could trade to her. But yeah, no doubt, and it's changed quick, right? Yeah. It's not been something that's just changed a little bit over time. It's gone up quick.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get to what's become my favorite part of this interview. That was a really good part of it last year. I want to hear a coon hunting story. Charlie Butler had us in stitches last year, and I know I talked to you guys a little bit. And Donnie, I think you and Frank got in a little bit of a mess one night around a horse barn or something. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Tell us a coon hunting story.
Well, I'd go down and go with Frank every once in a while because he was always having to come up there. And there was a place out there, I don't know whether Whitey knows of it or not, but it's right outside of Lexington. It's an old horse farm that had been shut down. And it was right in the middle of horse farm. And Lexington horse farm is not like our horse farms up here. I mean, you're talking about $1 million studs in there and all that. Well, this place was called Eyeball Bridge. It had a big creek running down through it. Of course, me and Frank was hunting a young dog by himself, and he's the only one that's ever went left-handed in there across that creek. And he run a coon right into a horse barn. And this is about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Frank parks the truck and he said, "Man, I wish we didn't even have a collar on that dog. We'd just leave here." He said, "I don't want to go in there." And I said, "Well, I don't either, but he said, "Well, we got to go." So we took off, parked our truck another place and walked. And we was slipping around like a thief in the night, you know, trying to get around that barn to get a hold of that dog. But when we got close enough, the motion sensor lights come on everywhere. It looked like a football field. And we didn't know where that man was, because they have people that cruise them farms all night long, security. I go in one end of the barn, Frank goes in the other end, and I hollered, "He's coming towards you," and Frank just scooped him up, and them horses was kicking the sides of that barn, carrying on. And we made it back to the road. I said, "Boy, I tell you now, that's our only one free chance here that we've ever had." So about 6 months later, we're on the other end of it, and we turn in, which is away from that. Well, then a lady state cop pulls up there, and she said, "I've seen your truck here before, and I don't want to see it again." So we had to get out of there. And then over there at that Eyeball Bridge, prior to us getting into that barn, there was a woman lived right up on top of the hill. Every time we'd go in there, she'd pull down to the bridge. She's come down there in the middle of the night in her night coat. 3 o'clock in the morning with 3 or 4 men standing there, didn't bother her. She said, "You need to get out of here." And then after that, she'd stand up on that bank and blow a whistle every time we went in there.
Probably my most memorable one is a lot of people probably know Kenny St. John, and he had the crystal lights, and Kenny was a character. And for years and years, and I still go up there the first week of season and hunt. And I hunt with Kevin Walker now since Kenny died. But we had a little restaurant that morning, and Kenny and an old farmer there told Kenny, said, "Now Kenny, y'all can hunt on me up there at night if you want to." He said, "But don't go through the gate." He said, "Park your truck at the gate." So we cut the dogs in there, and they got treed. So Kenny jumps out of the truck, and I had a little 96 model Ford truck, had it all painted up, windows and stuff, had it sharp. And Kenny said, "I'll open the gate." And I said, "Kenny, he told us not to drive down there." He said, "That old man, he's asleep. It's 12:30. So we pull down here, get out, we kill a coon. And about the time we killed the coon, I seen the lights come on at the farmhouse. I said, "Kenny, he's up." So we got in the truck, we started backing out of there, and all of a sudden, boom, boom, with an old shotgun. And Kenny laughed. He said, "What do you think about that old fool shooting at us that far with that shotgun?" So we didn't think nothing about it. And the first vehicle I met, my windshield looked like little stars. I mean, where he peppered that truck.
Oh my goodness.
I told Kenny, I said, "Oh yeah, that old man can't reach us from here." I never will forget that.
We've had some other experiences around home, different things, but I don't think it's something I need to get on here and talk about, really.
Well, I knew y'all had some good ones because Whitey was giving Greg Maynard down the road telling some stories there last night, so I knew we'd get into some good stories. And I looked out in the crowd and I saw Dick Brothers here. He told a good one last year. I'm happy to see Dick back, and happy to see all y'all. Y'all are what makes this sport. I mean, we look to you for advice and guidance, and when we say you're legends, we mean it. With that, I'll open up questions to the crowd. If anybody wants to come up here and grab the mic and ask these folks something, be happy to do it, and I'm sure they'd be happy to answer anything. Everybody got shy all of a sudden. Is there anything else that y'all want to add, or anything we didn't talk about, or something you might want to say before we sign off?
No, I'm good.
No, it's just like Whitey had said earlier. I just feel blessed to even be asked. I appreciate it.
Go ahead and hand it to Whitey there, if you will.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to everybody that's helped promote my breed of dogs, and I hope I leave a legacy to do that. I have done my part for better breeding of the hounds, and you're not going to satisfy everybody, and jealousy has a whole lot to do with that too. But we try to. The only thing I can always say, and Donnie made the compliment a while ago. He said you always had the best looking pups on the ground and took care of and stuff like that, and I take pride in that. I can guarantee, I always did guarantee one thing. I'm not going to say I'm going to sell you a top dog, because 10 out of 100, 10%, So there's going to be a lot of duds out there, and I'm going to raise a lot, and Donnie is and everybody else. But we try to do our best to do that. So I want to thank everybody that's ever supported me.
Well, this is why you all are the legends, and that's why you're sitting up here with us today. We really appreciate what you've done for this sport, what you continue to do for the Walker breed and for this sport of coon hunting, because it's, mentioned this to you, Whitey, it saved my life before, so, and I know a lot of people feel that way. So without people like you, we wouldn't have that. So, ladies and gentlemen.
Can I say one more thing?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Donnie mentioned Vern Miller. I served on the board for several years, and always was impressed when they give the Vern Miller Award, Sportsmanship Award away. To me, I always looked up to that person. And I want to say that of all the awards I ever got, the Walker Association, I'm more honored to have that one, but to remember as a sportsman than any other thing.
Ladies and gentlemen, with that, this is Whitey Marshall and Donnie Hubert. Give them a round of applause, and thank you all for being here.
Good boy. Good boy, Kyle. Good boy, bud.